right, so let's start at the beginning. So, hi, folks. I'm Dave.
I'm Sean.
And we are Barstools and Bandtalk. Here with Mad Symphony. We have Dave Groves here from Mad Symphony. This is going to be a great night. I'd like to hear all about your band. I watched a couple of videos. Actually, just posted a video on our site tonight. 6,000 people will see that video. So
Excellent.
Tell us a little bit more about Mad Symphony.
Well, we've been together for a few years now, about 3 years since we got all 6 members involved. But a lot of us have played in previous bands before this project. Like, for example, our drummer Wes and I have actually been in bands off and on since high school almost. He was like the drummer of my first original band out of high school. And then, you know, there was a period of many years in between where we didn't even see each other or talk, but somehow it always comes around. And then our keyboard player, Mike Russell, and I have been playing probably for 25 years off and on. And we were in an Ozzy Osbourne Black Sabbath tribute called Wizard of Oz for a number of years. And we've been doing some other things. But and we both play with Nick Gilder and Sweeney Todd. So that's sort of our, that's a really fun gig. We're sort of supporting members. Of course, Nick is the main guy. He's great. But it gets us out doing sort of bigger outdoor shows in the prairies and casinos. So I really enjoy that. But it's the Mad Symphony is really just a collaborative effort by all 6 of us, where we can all basically do whatever we want without, you know, anybody trying to tell us what to do, right? Or have to follow any set genre or style. Yeah. So that's why, you know, when I listen to our music, to me, it sounds like almost every band you've ever heard kind of mashed into one song or something. You could pick out elements of, you know, classic rock, old rock, new heavy metal. You know, we've got some stuff recorded where we're using 7-string guitars and 5-string basses to get that extra kind of low, chunky, more modern sound. But you haven't heard any of those yet. So we're really looking forward, even though we've just put out an EP of 5 songs. We're looking forward, or we wish we would have been able to put a 10-song CD out at the time. Our record company was, you're giving away 5 songs when you put out a CD, because like a full-length CD, because a lot of people don't buy CDs anyway. So
yeah,
you know,
that's unfortunately the world that we're in now.
It's constantly changing, and the media, you know, Spotify and streaming services have really taken off. But of course, the only people who benefit from that are, you know, the Drakes of the world and the guys that can, you know, get huge amounts of downloads and whatnot. It's very hard if you're an unknown band, say, never had success in the music industry before the year 2000. You know, if you have a catalog before the CD industry crashed, then you can still probably tour and draw and do some stuff. But after that, you know, it got a lot harder to get noticed. And of course, with the pandemic, nobody's touring. Well, right. Not in Canada so much. You know, the States is almost wide open in parts of it for that. But yeah, it's very difficult to get noticed. But the main thing you got to have, and I think we do, is have some great songs. You know, if you got great tunes, that'll always, you know, once people do hear it, if they ever hear it, you know, they can go, hey, what's that? That sounds pretty cool. I like that.
So I want to hit you with 3 things, Dave, as you were talking. So the first one is, you know, the whole Spotify. We were talking about this in another interview the other night. So I grew up a huge Bon Jovi fan. Slippery When Wet was their biggest album. I actually liked their second side better than their first side. Their first side had all the hits. In this day and age of Spotify, I don't know that I would have been a kid to investigate the second side, because I would just been going what Spotify would have fed me. I want to get your point of view on that. Second thing, you mentioned you guys are a 6-piece band, so this is kind of a funny, but Dave and I are part of a 6-piece band. I'm just wondering if you do what I do, and every show, one guy doesn't get paid to make sure that the money works out. And the third thing,
it's a great idea. It's
right. Hey, tell them Sean sent you, man. Because the third thing is that you brought up. You mentioned playing with Nick Gilder as well as Mad Symphony. We have some people out here that play in a lot of different bands, and we have some people that are against it. Talk about why you do that, because I suspect that you're going to say the Nick thing it's a lot of fun tunes and it's a bigger audience. The Mad Symphony thing scratches that itch that you don't get to do with that. Is that a fair statement? I hit you with a lot, so just answer what you can remember.
Well, as far as Spotify goes, I think you're right. It's a singles-based distribution system. You maybe put all your effort and money into producing one video that promotes one song or single initially, anyway. Unless you have deep pockets or a big record company, that's a different thing. But there's probably a ton of great undiscovered music. I'm with you. I like the CD still. I like to hear the whole album or vinyl. People aren't buying CDs, but they'll buy the vinyl for like 3 times the price. But now you get the free download of the album, a little code, so that you can stream it anyway, right? Or get a digital copy.
And I remember being a credits geek. Like I would listen to the CD. I wouldn't even go through the lyrics per se. I'd like to get into the weeds of who drove the trucks and that type of thing. So they just don't get that stuff anymore, right?
Yeah. I know with some young people in their 20s or teens are getting into vinyl, and cassettes apparently are a big thing. I still have a huge cassette collection from when I used to drive around in my car plugging in cassettes or making my own mixtapes. I still have a lot of that stuff. So it's almost funny to me to hear that kids are buying up cassettes, because the audio quality is so terrible and the lifespan of them is very short generally compared to vinyl, which you can take care of. But yeah, as far as albums, with Mad Symphony, that's one reason we really wanted to put out a physical copy, and of course all our stuff's available on all the streaming services, as most bands are. You sign up for a service that places them on everything: Apple Music, Spotify, Pandora, all that stuff.
Right.
And that's fine and stuff, but how do people actually hear that? Whereas in your example, Sean, you bought Bon Jovi maybe for the single, but you ended up liking the other 9 songs better, right? I mean, and that was true of like a lot of bands back, like Van Halen, for example. They had the big singles, but then people still all know all the other songs, like Little Dreamer and all these obscure ones off Van Halen 1 and 2, Light Up the Sky, whatever, right? There's songs they have that are radio, and there's songs that are for the more technical fans, and even Rush would it.
Oh yeah.
Although friend and hooks, but they also had all that musicianship that you could get if I went.
The one thing too that and David, I'll let you go to a question, but the one thing that I do like, and you'll see a 7-year-old that can play Tom Sawyer on any instrument, which is amazing. I was watching this thing the other day. So I'm a drummer, Brian Tichy. He did a version of "I'm the One" by Van Halen, and I mean, Alex Van Halen to me is the most unsung hero of drums. But when Brian Tichy was playing it, and I went back and I was listening to somebody. I said, "You got to watch this. This was 1977 that he recorded this."
Yeah.
And it's like, good Lord, how this man wasn't like, but it's so cool that you can go and search that stuff out now, because people are figuring it out, and it's in a, so that part of this whole thing doesn't bother me. It would have been great, as opposed to back in the day, sticking extra quarters on the arm of the record thing to try to figure out that lick, right? So
I love that.
Well, I used to put my 33 RPM to 16, right? So like
you were rich. I didn't have that. I just stuck my thumb on it.
You have to figure out like how Richie Blackmore's playing the fast part of Highway Star, or
That's right.
I remember learning how to play Spanish Fly instrumental by Van Halen by slowing it down, and by doing that, I didn't know he was finger tapping all that triplet stuff, so I came up with this technique where I just use my thumb and finger to hammer on.
That's cool, though.
Well, you know what? It's interesting.
Dave, that's cool.
Over it.
It's interesting you mentioned that, though, Dave, because, and Dave and I talked about this all the time, we were in high school, and it was probably the same way with you. If you could play Iron Maiden when you were in high school, you were a god. And you always figured out Iron Maiden, I'm learning harder than it actually was. So I'm seeing stuff from, like, you know, with the Killers album that they did live, and I'm going, like, that's what he's doing? Like, I thought he was going all like it, you know what I mean? So it is kind of cool now that it's out there, like, where it wasn't before.
Yeah, no, I mean, YouTube's great. It's you remember back, you know, in the early part of the music industry, it was very hard to actually see bands. You know, you'd read, get the magazine, and you'd have some pictures, and maybe if the band was really popular, you'd see them lip sync a song on TV for 5 minutes, but you couldn't just pull up a concert and see, like, I mean, that was a special event if you saw, you know, and you had to be huge like Led Zeppelin or the Stones to get filmed a full concert back in the 70s, right? So it is pretty cool for young people to be able to go back and watch old Van Halen concerts from 1984 in its entirety, you know, whatever, and obscure stuff. You know, we've got Van Halen's demos now from the first album. We've got demos of all these bands, and, you know, I mean, it's how deep down the rabbit hole do you want to go, right? Yeah,
you nailed it right there, Dave. And we talk about this a lot, and this is kind of what I want. Now, I wanted to kind of touch on one of the questions that Sean asked that I didn't hear the answer, like how many different bands that you played. I want to talk a little bit about Nick Gilder, but to your point, I don't know. You think that people, today's listening audience, are better off or worse off than we were?
I would say the audience is better off, but the artists are worse off. You know, it's kind of a balancing, a pendulum, perhaps, where the better it gets for the audience. You know, now you don't have to buy music anymore. You know, you used to have to rush out and line up to get the first copy of your album when it came out, and concert tickets. I remember, you know, lining up all night outside the mall.
Oh yeah,
to get front row at Rush or Van Halen or whatever, or Judas Priest. You know, all those kind of bands I went and saw, and I'm glad I did. But, you know, we got Ticketmaster, things sell out in 5 seconds because tickets go on sale worldwide, and it's weird, but for us, but you know, access to music's never been greater, but that comes with another problem. There's so much of it. How do you sort through it and find the good stuff? Because literally anybody can put anything out anywhere. And whereas before you had to, you know, you had to get on the radio to get heard, and to get that you had to have a record deal, and you had to go through all these people that checked out your music first before it got distributed out to the world and made sure it was good and sellable and all that stuff. And now we don't have that part of it. So
Dave, listen to this. We'll enjoy this show. We'll take a quick break and come back because we have to have a little word from our sponsors and all that jazz. So we'll do that. We'll come back. Want to hear a little bit more about Nick Gilder. You're touching on some really good key points that Sean and I have been discussing for our last 2 years with this Barstools Bandtalk site. Whereas, how do we get the artists paid? You know, how do you get to see them? You know, like it's a real thing. So I appreciate what you're saying, and I know Sean's got a question too. So let's take a little quick break, and we'll come back. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right, we're right back.
Barstools